animals, people, and nature. So my work is always in some area inside of this triangle. And I'm also particularly interested in groups of people who seem weird to the rest of the society. But when I mean the word weird, I mean it with a very positive approach, not in a negative way at all. And you will understand me better when we see my work. The first project I'm going to talk about is "The Earth is Only a Little Dust Under Our Feet." It's a very long title, I know. In this time, I don't know why I choose like this long title, but the thing is that it's about Iceland. And when I was in a residency, in an artist residency in the island, I discovered that there is like a huge belief in elves and many other magical beings in the island. With elves, I also mean fairies, trolls, gnomes, any magical being that you can imagine is living in Iceland. So when I discovered about this incredible world, I wanted to delve into it. So you understand better what I mean. Sometimes some of the roads in Iceland are built with a deliberate kink. So when you are driving, suddenly you see that you have to turn around one huge stone and then the road follows. And this is usually because there is an elf living in that stone. And this is something that happens very usually, it's very common, because when they start making new roads, sometimes all the tools and all the machinery they need, it stops working. Suddenly all people working there also get sick. And there are some suspicious that maybe there are some elves living around the area who don't want the road to be made in that area. And in that moment, what they do is they call Ranghildur, who is the elves spokesperson. So it's the person who deals between the humans and the elves. And in case there are some elves living in there are two options. The first one is that they continue living there and the road goes around the stone, or they can take the elves and they move somewhere else. They find like a nice habitat for them. So I think that this example can make us understand in a very strong way how in a huge way they believe in elves and other magical beings and how they respect their environment. Also, once a woman told me that if the president admits in public that he or she doesn't believe in elves and the magical beings, he or she would never be re-elected. And I think that this is like a way to understand very well how they live all these situations. So it's not a belief, it's a reality for them because they can see and talk and touch these magical beings. Not everyone, but 2% of inhabitants in Iceland can see the elves and other magical beings. So I discovered that there is a school in Reykjavik, the Elf School, where they teach you everything you need to know about this magical world. So obviously in 2013, I decided to take that course. And this is me with Marcus, and in my hand, you can see the diploma. This diploma is this one that confirms that now I am an expert in everything related to the hidden world in Iceland. So this was the beginning. This was the way for me of doing some research and to see how I could document this incredible world in Iceland. And my first approach was to travel all around the Iceland and find the people, mostly find the places where these elves live, to see if I could see them myself. That was never possible, but at least I wanted a lot with nature in Iceland. And even if at the beginning I wasn't able to see nature, it's true that when time went by, it was more and more possible to see things. So because I remember that one woman once told me that Iceland is full of trolls, and at the beginning I wasn't able to see them, but then I started seeing them. I don't know if you see my mouse, but can you see the face of a troll here? Trolls are one of those beings that are the ones that are not very much loved, but it was, well, no, I didn't find anyone who spoke very well about trolls because they are bad tempered and they like to stay in the same place for a long time. They don't move very quickly, and they protect the landscape. But mostly my biggest goal was to find the people who have the ability to see the elves. There are 300 numbers in English. There are 3,100 people in Iceland. No, 300 people in Iceland. That's something like the population in Bilbao. So they are not a lot of people. And all of them are online in a website where when you type a name, you can find the address and the telephone number. So when I was doing this research and I found someone who could see the elves, the only thing that I had to do was to call them on the phone. And that was the beginning of how I started. And so here in this picture, you have Nina. She was one of the first women that I met. And she's very sensitive to stones and also to feathers. So she told me that there is a goddess who appears to her and she tells her exactly where she had to go to find the feathers, because with these elements she makes her wands, because she's also a shaman. And I decided to portray her in this way because it was like so immersive, no? She has, when I went to her house, all the house was full, but full. You can imagine in which way, full of stones. So what I decided to do was to take all these stones that have so much energy and put it around her face. And I did the same portrait with the feathers, actually. And this other woman is called Frida, and she told me the story of her grandmother, who was a midwife. And someone was in labor. What she did was she cleaned afterwards all the tools, so they were all clean for the next time she had to run to help another woman. And one night, when she was sleeping, suddenly a huldufolk woke her up. The huldufolk are the Icelandic elves. And she woke up and the huldufolk asked her if she could go with her and help her friend because she was having a lot of trouble. So at labor. So what she wanted, of course, and everything went okay. And the following morning when she woke up, all her tools were covered in blood. So for her, it was a way to prove that it wasn't a dream, but it was a reality, that she had helped a huldufolk giving birth. A few nights later, the huldufolk appeared in her dreams again, to say thank you and also to ask what she could do in exchange to that favor that she did. And the human woman, the grandmother of Frida, told her to please help her son, who was a fisherman. So from that moment on, the huldufolk appeared to her son when she was fishing, telling her where was the best fish in the sea. So he became like a very, very lucky fisherman some way. And one of the most important things that I discovered in Iceland was the big relationship that all this being has with the aura of the people. We usually have some aura around us, different colors, different energy that give clues of how we feel and how we are. Different colors mean different things. And a lot of people that I met, they had the ability to see the aura of the people. So they could say if you were happy, angry, or however you felt. And I found a man who was a farmer as well, who is the only person in Iceland who has a camera that is connected to a computer that can take an image, a moving image of the aura of people. So she uses this technology to find different diseases of on people, because he's also a healer. So here he can see if that people is sick or she has a tumor or whatever, and then he uses these abilities to heal that person. And this is an image that was taken from his computer. And this also gave me a clue to solve how I could photograph the invisible, because my biggest doubt before doing the project was, well, how can I photograph what I'm not able to see? And see, this computer gave me a clue, like I could use color, because color is what shows the energy of the people. Also, he told me that, well, I didn't tell you this before, but elves live usually in stones, and people who have the ability to see the aura can also see which stones are inhabited by elves, because they can see the aura around the stones. So if the stones have color, that's because it's inhabited. If there is no color, it's because there's no one living there. So that's how I started doing this kind of pictures, where I use different filters, colors, and color papers in front of my camera to photograph what I was not able to see. And that was a formula that I use all the time in the project with many different images. I don't know if you are familiar with the project, but well, this was like my formula, using color. Like this is another of those pictures that I didn't know how to do at the beginning, because I remember people explaining me what they could see and I wasn't able to see. Like, for example, a woman in Olasfjordur. Olasfjordur is a very small town in the north of Iceland, told me that when she was driving at night in the mountains, well, in the mountains she could see a city, and when she went into the city, she saw a city that was made of ice, the town of the Elves of the Ice. So after she was telling me this story, I decided to photograph it this way. But I mean, this is not real, we could say. This was my own creation, based on what the people that I met were telling me. No, it was a way of translating what they could see into my own world. And this picture tells another story. This is the story of Olga. Olga's father was a psychic. I don't know how to pronounce this word, but well, he was able to speak with the dead. So a lot of people in Iceland would come to see him, so they could reach the dead people, like the dead moms, brothers, sisters, or whatever. And he was really famous. And when he died, it was Olga who took his place, because she also has the ability to see dead people. But the story that she told me was that when she was a little girl, they slaughtered the dog with the horse of the family to eat, because in Iceland they eat horses. So I mean, they as here we slaughter the pigs, they slaughter horses. When they slaughtered the horse for food, and a plate of horse was put in front of her, she refuses to eat it. And her father told her, like, you have to eat this meat, because not eating it would be like very bad seen by the horse, because I have seen the horse playfully running in the fields. So from that moment on, she started eating meat again. But when she told me this story, obviously I was like, I found it really interesting, but I never thought it was going to be possible to take a picture of wild horses running in the wild. So this happened absolutely by chance when I was visiting a completely different person in the other corner of Iceland. That I think because sometimes I had this feeling, even if I never saw the elves, that I had some kind of energy helping me with everything and following me everywhere. So I was visiting another woman in another place, in a very different place, and suddenly she told me that the horses had run away and they were somewhere else, like they had to go look for them. And she told me, like, do you want to come with us? And I was like, of course. So we went to find them, and suddenly all this happened. Like we were helping them, all the horses, to go back to the place that they belong. But when I took the picture and I saw the picture, I immediately related this picture with the story that Olga told me before. So these things sometimes happen, this magic, when you are taking pictures. Because I'm usually, well, it's a thing that we are not together, but I usually plan my pictures quite a lot. Like I have a plan. I draw what I have in mind. Obviously, when you arrive somewhere, things can be really different, so it doesn't work. But for me, it's a way to find some kind of formula to work on. Something goes wrong, at least I have some ideas that I can work on. So I'm telling you this because in the example of the horse, obviously I never planned it, it happened. But sometimes I plan things, like here, for example, another way of photographing the invisibility, I thought that it was possible to make the people who can see the elves interact with what they are seeing. Well, so when Brindis took me to a stone near her house where the elves lived, I told her, like, can you hug your best friend, your best friend who is an elf? And she told me, like, of course. So here you have Brindis hugging an elf. I'm not sure if you are able to see it, but when I asked Brindis, like, can you see it? I mean, is it in the picture as well? And she told me, obviously, yes, it's here. So we are not able to see, but still they are able to see the elves in pictures, which I find really interesting. I could be talking about this project forever, so I had to choose very few pictures. But one of the questions that everyone asked me when regarding to this project is like, and did you believe them? And I always give the same answer, like, absolutely, yes, I believe them, because I don't know if it's real. I mean, I don't know if it's true that if it's real what they are seeing or it's part of the imagination, but I know that they believe what they are seeing. So for me, that's the biggest truth. So I don't think they are making up anything. And I didn't have the sense of being fooled at any time by them. The only time that I had some suspicious was with this man who was very nice, but well, it's weird because he is the only one who gave me proof, like real proof that I could see about what he witnessed. And this man, I'm going to play a video. Wait. I don't know why I can't. Okay. Are you still seeing my screen, right?
Yes.
Okay, great. So here you have this video. Because this man, Horknur is his name, he was able to record a monster living in a lake just in front of his house. So he took the camera, he recorded it, and it went viral. So when I discovered his story, I said, okay, I have to see this man and I have to see what he has recorded. And this is what he recorded. It's the only proof that something weird is going on. Something that shouldn't be there because we don't see very clearly what it is. And when I asked him, okay, and what would you do if you see it again? And he answered, I would fish it and eat it. And I was like, this is not like, it doesn't go very well with all this story. I mean, this respect for the monster is not very it's not very related to what I have spoken with the rest of the people who were so close to these beings. So that was the only time that I thought that something fishy was going on. And another of the questions that people ask me usually is like, and why? Why do they see? Why do they have the ability to see and we don't? And that's something that I ask myself many times, mostly because I wanted to see them myself. And I spoke with a scientist woman that I met in Iceland, and she told me that Iceland is just below a very strong electromagnetic field, and that energy makes our perception to be much more open, and that openness makes it possible to be able to see the Elves. We don't have that energy above us. That energy is only in the north, in the northeast part of the world. So that's why we don't have this ability. And obviously there is another reason, is that Christianity was there much later than in the rest of the world. So that makes them like more open to all these things. And this was a very complex project for me because there are so many elements. There are the pictures, then they have archive photographs. I also have all the tests that I wrote for all the stories that I have told you had to be in the book as well. No, so I always thought that the best way to tell this story, the best format, was the book, and it was possible thanks to Nico and Tiffany. And it's incredible because this was before COVID, but we did everything on Skype. So that's how the book was born. This book that is print out. There are no more books available. But thing is that it was important to me to finish it in a book because I thought that it was the way that it deserves to be told, the story. So it combines photograph with text. We can say that there are two books inside the same book. And there is, I don't have the time to speak about the book, which is the same, but I just wanted to tell you that sometimes it's really important to work with a designer and obviously with a publisher who can help you enrich the project. And I think that Nico, the designer, had a very great idea when and I think that he understood very well the project when he decided that we were going to leave some blank pages in the book, that this can be seen as a mistake, maybe, like, yeah, something weird is going on here. Why is there is nothing on these pages? I mean, there are like 10 pages with nothing, it's blank. And that's because it's the space where these invisible beings inhabit. So that's the place for them in the book, no? And I find it very metaphoric and very beautiful. And then there is also another particularity in the book, which I find interesting, that is that sometimes there are some small very short sentences that are almost invisible because they are printed in a very like white color. And there are sentences like this, like that always speak about invisibility as well. When you turn on the radio, do you see the waves? All these words were sent to me by people that I met. It's not my creation, it's documented. So the nice thing about these invisible messages is that when you put it on the light with the sun, it charges. And then when you go to a dark room, you can see it, how it blows, no? And I think that's also beautiful because it's another way of speaking about invisibility. But well, it was an adventure making this book. And it was a really long trip, but it was nice to do it, obviously. And well, you can ask me questions afterwards. Seems that I didn't have time to speak about more pictures, but I also wanted to talk about this last project that I'm working on at the moment because it's very different. And I think that it's important that as a photographer, you have to adapt to the story that you are telling, because depending on what you're telling, the needs of the pictures and the project is completely different. So Haiek danak sorginak is Basque, it should be in English, all of them witches, is a visual recreation of witch hunt in the Basque Country during the Middle Ages. So from photographing reality, I go to photographing the past, something that we don't have any visual clue of what happened because there was no photography, and there are no paintings. There's not anything about that era visually that I can use. And obviously it happened 400 years ago. But thing is that the project, I started this project from very personal necessity to demystify the figure of the witch, because I have this idea that we have a very mythologized idea of what the witch is. When we think of witches, we think of old women with a very pointed hat, black, dressed in black, wrinkled, full of wrinkles, and like evil woman, and that's something that has nothing to do with reality. So I wanted to, as I said, demystify the figure of the witch and somehow raise the story of these women who were very unfairly persecuted. And it was a challenge for me because for the first time in my life, I was going to work on stage photography, something that is completely different from everything that I've done before. And I had some kind of responsibility with history because I was telling something that really happened. So what I did at the beginning in 2016 was just read everything that I could about the history of witches in the Basque Country, because I'm focused particularly in the Basque Country. And well, in this grabado, I don't know how you say that in English, but you can see everything that happened, everything that is related to witches, like how they fly, how they dance naked, how they adore the devil, how they renewed and dance naked or have sex all together or whatever. Well, thing is that I started thinking that there is a lot of, we have a very ambiguous idea of the witches. Like we have a general idea, but not a concrete idea. And that I think is because, so I thought that maybe if I gave names of these women, I could tell like a much more close story of what was going on. And because when you give names and surnames, like you are humanizing these women. And when you are humanizing these women, I think that somehow you are getting closer to them and their story. So that's why I was mostly interested in the confessions that these women made when they were tortured by the men of the church. And that's what I have been doing lately. And by giving names, I tell like very concrete stories. Like this one, for example, is the story of Margarita de Jauri, who was accused of being a witch, and then she was forgiven, but still she was bullied, or she was prosecuted by all her neighbors. They would hit her, follow her with stones, and she couldn't support it anymore. So what she couldn't with it, and she killed herself, throwing herself to the river in her town. So I mean, two important facts. First, that it was not only a problem with the church, it was also a problem with the neighbors. And another important thing that I wanted to say is that usually what happened to me when I'm reading this part of these confessions is that I literally see images. When I read this story of Margarita de Jauri, I was all the time thinking about Ophelia. I guess it's a reference that we all have in our minds right now, Ophelia of Millais, that is a Hamlet, it's a woman created by Hamlet. and we all have in mind right now the woman in the river, I guess, no? So what I decided was like at least to recreate this in a more dramatic way. So that's how the picture was taken. And also, these women, obviously, they were not old, bad women. They were very, well, usually they were herbalists. So they knew the plants and flowers in the area, and they would use that knowledge to heal the people. So they were the doctors of the time. And also they were midwives, and they have the power of reproduction. They knew how to have children and how to stop having them. So there is a short part of the project in which I'm, to honor this part of the herbalist, what I'm doing is to put women in nature, and slowly are being covered by nature in some kind of camouflage until they literally disappear and they become soil. This picture and the one that follows, I've never shown them before because I'm still doing it, so you are going to be the first ones. But here is this woman who is being eaten by the grass, no, by the plants, and slowly all the forest is eating the woman as well. So for me, it's a way to tell the story of how close these women were with their surroundings, and mostly with the forest and with the nature in the Basque Country. And then there is that, what I told you, like that mythified idea of, mythologized idea of the witch, in which they were accused of everything which was bad, from cannibalism to apostasy, vampirism, necrophagy, and the best, but the worst of them, it was infanticide. They were accused of killing many children, and we have to take into account that in that time, children died everywhere. Every time, all the time, So every time some children died, it was it was the witches who were doing it. It was not a natural death, but it was a murder by the witches. And also, they were more interested in children that were just born and not baptized, because they could offer it to the devil. It was the best bit. They would eat these children in the aquelarres, in the Sabbats. So that's how I decided to recreate these images that for me is like somehow at the start of the party where they are going to eat this baby. And I wanted to tell you about the process of the project, because at the beginning I wanted to do some kind of nomadic project in which I would go all around the Basque Country and photograph the women living in the villages that were affected by witch hunt. But I realized that it was impossible because I wasn't time long enough in each of the places to bond with the women who lived there. So that was so terribly difficult. So finally I decided to stay in my parents' home in the north of the Basque Country, and from there I would travel to different places. And also all the people that you see in the images are my friends, family, and some other women that are related to witchcraft in today, but who are close to me. And I think that's why this project is so important to me, because I couldn't have done it alone. I have my family and friends who have done it with me. And here you have an example. This is how the picture was taken. Like this picture was taken. This little boy is my nephew. And all my family was around when I was taking the picture, because we had just made a picture all together. But that for me, this is like a really important part of the project. That's why I feel so close to this project. And as I told you before, a lot of children died, and it was always to blame the witches always. And I saw these pictures, not because I particularly like it, but I like the process because it was so difficult to find a parent that would let me kill the child for a minute. This is how the picture happened. But seriously, it took me ages to find someone. And in the picture, you can see Daniel. He's the son of my friend Irati, who told me, okay, we can make him sleep a little bit. I don't even know if this picture is going to be in the final edit, but I'm telling you all this because sometimes we can do a lot with nothing. Like even what you see in, of course, I rented all the dresses and all like that, but all the atrezo and things that you see in the pictures, it's a very homemade atmosphere, and I'm happy with it. It's not like, I don't think we always need to complicate ourselves too much, mostly when we don't have the way to, we don't have the money to do it. So we have to adapt ourselves as well. Some of the other interesting things about witches was that they would make different ointments with terrible elements like dead animals, the bones of dead people, or toads, anything. They would boil it all together, and then they would make some kind of cream that they would put in their bodies. And with that, they could fly to the Sabbath. And also it made them, it was possible for them to change into different animals. So witches not only were able to fly to the Sabbath in their own form, but also transform in elephants, dogs, cats, or any animal you can imagine. So it's incredible to see how all this was a reality back then. But it's also true that it's very easy to judge what was right or wrong with the eyes we have today. So that's something that I had to learn as well, like to feel respect for the time that I'm photographing somehow. There is a very interesting book written by a French inquisitor who came to the Basque Country following women to kill them. And he was terrified by the women in the Basque Country. And one of the things that he said was that in the Sabbath, apart from having sex with everyone, no matter if they were part of the same family, he didn't like the way the Basque women moved. And he said that they could dance in a way so hard that they were able to produce an abortion while they were dancing. And of course, there is another part of the project that is visiting those places that has been related to witchcraft, but it's always in this kind of atmosphere. So I shoot in winter a lot and when the weather is really bad, because I want to have all this kind of humid atmosphere in the project. That's very important to have all this unity in the color of the project. And this is another picture that was difficult to make because I had this idea of hanging a woman from a tree and having the ships below. But I thought it was going to be impossible because how I could put the ship below the woman without them moving. And I wanted to put a ship because I relate this way, because the ships being still for me is something very related to something that is very common or normal. The ships are only, they only stop in a place when they feel safe somehow. So when they meet someone, if you see an animal or a person going next to a ship, they will run away. So for me, it was a way of showing how the indifference of the killing of the women at the time. So I finally find the way with Swart in the Basque Country, who was the one who put the ship in there. So I mean, it's also a very collaborative project. But with these pictures, what I wanted to tell you to finish is that when I talked about this project with anthropologists, I usually men. And I remember that I once had a conversation with one that I ended up being really angry because he told me like, Bego, but the witch hunt in the Basque Country wasn't that bad. Not many women died. And I was like, excuse me? I think it's a mistake when we count the women who died at stake, because that was not the only consequence. We have to think about the women who died while they were being tortured, also the ones who died in prison, the ones who killed themselves, like Margarita de Jauri, because they couldn't deal with it anymore. And of course, all the women that were exiled from their homes and were not able to come back again. Also, it was this revenge from the church was given to these particular women, but the same was inherited by the women after themselves, by the daughters and grandchildren, because it was the same of the surname, no? So I mean, the consequences were huge, and in this investigation, what I have realized is that what happened then has shaped the way that women live today. And that's where I'm going with my investigation right now. And to finish, this time I promise, I wanted to show another video of how this picture was taken, because I think it's important to talk also about the people who make all the pictures possible, because we don't do all of this alone. Here we have Enrique, he's a Cepa that I was talking about. And here we have his sheep. And here we have Amaya, who was hanging in the tree. And you have, well, you can hear me, but I'm saying Enrique where I would like to have the sheep. So this is how it happened. And it's been possible thanks to him. And that's something that I find really interesting about photography, that we don't always work alone, but we also interact a lot with the people to make things possible. And of course, with the women and all the people who are in the pictures. And that's all. Thank you so much. Wait, I'm going